What makes the ultimate daily driver? When I moved back to New York, I was quickly and brutally reminded of what it's actually like to drive here. It's like this, and like this, and like that, and like this. So really, the ultimate daily driver is the subway.
Or, even better, a bike.
Fastest thing to get around in the city, most direct, most fun, most resilient to traffic conditions. But I have a mental illness, which is called being a car enthusiast. So I'm always hauling around differentials and my shop is an hour away. And well, of course, a good daily is going to need to have a fizzy engine. It's going to need to have decent ride quality. It's going to want to handle well, have good steering. But depending on where you live, how your car feels to go somewhere in might be equaled in importance by how it feels to go absolutely nowhere. That's why I decided that before I make this thing go bois, I needed to make these things go bois. So let's get started on Ultimate Daily Civic Episode 3, Audio Edition. But first, check out these dope-ass cats.
The first step in our audio journey takes us down south to buy an amp off Facebook Marketplace.
I am in Staten Island now, land of the dead. This amp is somewhere between $150 and $350. I actually don't remember, but not money I wanted to spend. So anyway, I got it for 60 bucks. 4 channels. I'll be honest, I wish it wasn't huge and like 500 pounds, but I think that's what these amps pretty much are like.
Now, soon after I bought that amp, I did my whole 4-corner refresh like I showed in the last video. And then I drove up to Vermont for a job. And in between rehearsals, I got right to it and started with sound deadening the entire car. Now, old Civics are famously easy to work on, and the interior is no exception to that. I had a blast taking this thing apart, and it only probably took an hour and a half.
Now, whenever I remove anything that has like 14 washers and spacers on it, I'd rather not disassemble that.
As I was pulling this carpet out, I was patting myself on the back for going through the trouble of buying a Southern car. This thing was spotless.
Someone just walked into my driveway and asked to buy this car. It's the 5th time that's happened.
Popping these panels out was also pretty enjoyable. After years of working on BMWs, I was amazed when none of the clips broke. The engineering of this door panel was equally serviceable and simple, and though I was scared to take it off, nothing bad happened.
This beautiful piece of door.
Now, these giant, uninterrupted, unstamped, flat sheets of door panel steel are some of the most important things you can deaden. A common misconception, especially on YouTube with this sound deadening work, is that it's meant to soundproof the car. The goal is actually just to reduce the panel resonance in the car.
Wow, this is kind of a scary thing because I think to take this off would be kind of a horrible task. So this is kind of permanent modification.
The reason to go through the trouble of deadening a car is that cars are basically terrible hi-fi listening rooms. They're giant steel drums that resonate at whatever frequencies they want. Deadening this room, so to say, flattens things out and allows the speakers to more accurately reproduce the sound they're trying to reproduce, with the added benefit of reducing road noise, a lot of which comes through as panel resonance.
This rear panel is a major culprit here. So just 3 bolts to remove this whole speaker with its bracket, and that way we can just slide mats in. All right, so I just checked in the forums how to remove this piece, and it says pull hard. Can we get this in there without destroying anything? Oh yeah. Yes. I love tools. No damage. Soft. Oh, horrifying. Look at that, not a single broken clip. And the easiest way to cut this stuff is on a piece of wood. Just like that. Now this piece just has a much softer, heavier vibe. And I actually am gonna put a piece on the back of the license plate because it's metal on metal.
Now, some of this might seem a little over the top, but my sub is going in that spare tire well there, and I wanted this to be truly rattle-free. The last thing I wanted for my ultimate daily Civic was for it to sound like a 2007 Jetta that someone threw a 12-inch scar into the trunk of.
All right, well, I've used all my Kilmat. Here's what we're looking at.
Another common misconception is that you want totally gapless application of your sound deadening material. The point is actually to separate large, unstructured panels of metal, because if you think about it, those thin little gaps of metal are actually not really going to resonate very much because they have deadening on either side of them. They're essentially like a half-inch panel now.
So if you're curious, 36 square foot Kilmat box is extreme basic package. Got me crank. Ooh, that made a big difference.
Step 2 in our audio journey is the Big 3 mod. This is basically a grounding upgrade. We're going to add a extra ground from the battery to the chassis, and then we're also going to upgrade a host of other grounds, but that's the main one, and the ground from the engine to the body, and the positive charge wire from the alternator to the positive terminal of the battery.
For the other two, I'm going to add a 4-gauge wire on top of them. I'm going to do a parallel run. For this one, I'm just going to delete this little thing and throw it in a pot with some bolognese. 4-gauge is already skinny stuff in terms of big leagues audio stuff. I'm not doing anything crazy with this car. If you look at competition audio cars or whatever, they have 0-gauge wire. It's like ridiculous. Better quality wire, oxygen-free copper, and the thicker wire reduces resistance along that wire. Your alternator sends a certain amount of amperage out of it that is limited. I don't know what it is, 80 amp alternator or whatever it is. In a perfect world, you'd get all of those 80 amps all the way to your amplifier, your subwoofer, your, fuel injectors, your ECM, your whatever. There's voltage drop because you lose current into heat when it goes through a wire that has resistance. This. 1.3-ish ohms of resistance. Now let's try this. 0.9. So there's an immediate example of how much resistance we're about to do away with this modification. It would be so awesome to do this job with the right tools. But I'm gonna also see how awesome it is to do it without the right tools. Hey, that's pretty good. I can't get it off. I'm genuinely not able to pull that at all.
Now, at this point, I got sort of horrifically confused because that's a rubber seal there underneath where this ground goes, and rubber is famously non-conductive. So I spent a little while trying to find a picture of an OEM Honda Civic engine bay, which is much harder than it sounds because they're all so modified. So I actually had to go to Bring a Trailer and look at some engine bay pictures of some stockies in order to figure this out, and it turns out that is a stock grounding location. But then I saw on other cars, notably this EX and a bunch of SIs, that it's bolted to the power steering bracket. So I think once I install power steering, I'm going to move it there.
Sanding down the stockers. 3.
I didn't mention it earlier, but I also decided to double up on this little one from the trans to the frame.
That's nice and loomed. Now it's also a good idea to upgrade the starter cable. And I'm missing one of the big 3, which is the alternator power to positive terminal cable. I'm not going to do those right now because they're both hot cables, which means that you should fuse them. And I don't have a fuse that'll fit on a 4-gauge wire, except the one that comes with my amplifier wiring kit. And I'm going to use that one for the amplifier itself because I want to get some audio in this car, and I'm excited about that. What I've done is the big 2. My friend Ryan taught me always after you do something to a car, just keep starting it in between every 5 or 6 steps just so that you don't do 100 steps and then the car doesn't start and you have to count back from there. That's a happy car. One of my little old car things I like to do is keep a little test wire in the empty fuse slot.
Before we get to the next step of the audio install, this is just about when the windshield guy came to replace my cracked windshield.
Ever since then, I'm like,
Got the new moldings.
New windshield.
All right, step 3 is installing the actual amp and wiring everything up.
The basics of my setup are as follows. This is the head unit. It's the ghost box that's already in the car. That goes to main in. Then sub out, those are already wired and loomed in the car. That's just 2 RCAs, right and left. And those go back to the sub, which has its own amplifier. Now, here we've got our 4 channels, speaker channels, front out, rear out. Those are gonna go to these channels, channel 1, 2, 3, and 4. Front 2 and rear 2. Now, from there, we are gonna have our speakers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's gonna be speaker wire. And then, of course, there's power for here, and the subwoofer has power as well.
I saw one of these Clarions in a white EF sedan nut slammed on the ground, and I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I need to have one of those in my car. So this whole audio build was kind of predicated on this piece of EQ machinery, and I was so excited about it. Now the install begins with getting power from the positive terminal of the battery through the firewall.
Oh yeah, like that. So what I did is in the firewall, I just pushed as much of it through as I could until it started creeping down through here. And now we've got just enough here. So ultimately you place your fuses as close to the battery as possible. That's why a car has all those fuses right there. Again, because I'm mocking everything up, I'm gonna just use zip ties for pretty much everything and roll it like that so that it turns into a hook. Really tight spaces. Boom. So unfortunately, at a certain point in the slider, going back, it stops fitting. I kind of really like the idea of tucking it back in there. Goes in there. This piece of power goes into the slot for battery. The subwoofer wasn't working right before. I still don't know why. So what I want to do is be able to run 4-gauge power and ground, but it's got its own little stupid pinout.
So what I did here is clip all 4 wires from the pinout and just run my own 4-gauge to those 4 18-gauge guys. And then I did the same thing for the power wire, which I ran from the distribution block. So it's getting the same power from the battery that the amp is getting.
Take off these little spade connectors.
These little wires here are speaker wires. I don't actually know why the speaker wire can be thin while the power wires have to be really thick. If someone knows the answer to that, please let me know in the comments.
Before I go any farther, I'm going to test this whole system with just this one speaker. But first I have to wire remote.
Here I'm just making sure that my gain is set to 0 to start out with, and then I'm setting a high pass filter of 90 Hertz because on my subwoofer I have a low pass filter of 90 Hertz, which means that
these speakers won't attempt to reproduce any frequencies that are below 90 Hertz, and that subwoofer won't try to reproduce any frequency above 90 Hertz. Okay, nothing blew up. So that light's on, the subwoofer is on. Everything's all connected. I only have one camera, so I'm just gonna test it and then tell you what happens. That was full of surprises. It's got like a noise when I'm not playing a song, like a gee. And then the other thing that's annoying is that the amp is still on, even though the car's been off for a few minutes. I'm gonna take a little lead here and I'm gonna send power to my remote lead.
doing this lets me know that the remote function does work.
That turns the amp on and off. Now that's great. If I disconnect all my RCAs, the amp turns off. What this means is that the amp has signal sensing.
the reason this was happening was that I was using the car's dedicated radio power cable to send power to my head unit and EQ. And that was when the car was off, sending a constant like half a volt through those items, and that was causing signal to come through the RCAs and keeping the amp on. I fixed it by switching to just a totally separate fused power source from the interior fuse box.
Now, if you know car wiring, you know that you spend a lot of your time upside down under the dashboard. So I like to add a little bit of physical therapy to my project budget.
I now have the amp
Fully hooked up to all 4 speakers.
sick. I've done some research and I learned some more about ground loops. So apparently you want to ground your head unit and your amplifier at the same grounding point.
I tried regrounding stuff and it fixed nothing. The noise was still there, so I decided just to look past the noise and go on to setting up my stereo.
The other thing I found out is how to set gain using a multimeter. So that's what we're going to do first. Our desired amp output volts, aka gain, we're going to want to set to the square root of wattage times ohms. And then we literally stick the multimeter in there. And then we play from our head unit. We want to set the gain such that the output read
So after an hour of pain trying to set the gain using a multimeter and then Googling how much a real oscilloscope costs, which is how you really should set gain, I decided just to set it by ear. And then I invited my girlfriend Danny out for the first test. Now, unfortunately, because this is YouTube, I can't play the actual bangers that I was playing on my phone at this point. So you're going to have to use your imagination coupled with my facial expressions and this wonderful royalty-free music. Sounded amazing, but it only really sounded amazing at full volume. And I looked up on the forums what was causing this, and I did some more diagnostic work, unplugging and plugging things in. And
that is the bad sound.
I pretty much narrowed it down to the Clarion. So I decided to put the car back together for my trip back to New York. And once I was there, I was going to follow the internet's advice and just get a brand new head unit.
We're all tucked up. The amp is in here. So it's hidden. I don't know if that's the final resting place, but subwoofer's under some clothes, anti-theft device. I got to figure out the carpet edges here, but it's better than it ever has been. Door panels back together. Oh, yeah. This little bungulus is back together. I put a zip tie on the inside to try to make it better, but it just looks way more bungulus than ever. Oh, yeah.
Best Buy like it's 1999.
These are well reviewed. The touch feeling is kind of cheap, but it's got a 13 band EQ. It's pretty good. And you can do 2 phones and like switch between the 2 phones, which is cool. It also turns off, unlike the Ghost Box, which just turns itself on. Comes with this little mic. This stuff is all labeled, which is super sweet. Spaghetti. I'm gonna use my Addifuse to run switched power from here. Filming. All right, here we go. Hopefully it won't turn on.
Ideally, at this point, nothing happens.
Okay, nothing happened, so that's ideal. Okay, the car's on, nothing has happened.
Mine does that too.
Is that good?
Yeah, it takes a second. There it is.
Oh, I see a light. Oh! Should we put it in English?
Yes.
Do we cancel the demo?
Yeah.
Cancel demo, yes? Or no demo, no? Oh, it's green!
Nice. That must mean something.
This thing sounds amazing. It sounds really clear at low volume with the subwoofer still involved, which is not something I could land with the old one. There's very little of the noise, if any. It's so much louder and clearer at high volume. Everything is better. I have no regrets. And look at all these different kind of colors we can have. I feel like Aqua 2 kind of matches the color of the car. We Kenwood honkin'. It looks pretty good. So as I was putting this video together, I realized it might not be totally satisfying not to hear the system play at least just a little bit. Obviously, the iPhone microphone is never going to pick up the dynamic range of frequencies that we are experiencing in this car, or even a car with a worse sound system. But I will play a little bit of Creative Commons license, royalty-free music by this electronic artist Neolore that I found.
I'm recording this bit more than a year and 10,000 miles since I installed the system, and it's never had a single issue. It's one of the most worthwhile things I've ever done to a car, and probably the best upgrade you can do to a car that spends a lot of time in traffic. Whether you're listening to jazz, rap, rock, Gregorian chants at high volume or low volume, it makes a world of difference. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more Car Time with Henry.